Day, the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement, and Statistics Research and Planning is calling this informational hearing to order. It is now 1:02 p.m. on Monday, February 1st, 2021. Notice of this afternoon's informational hearing was provided to senators, stakeholders, and the local media on January 25th, 2021 for the 5-day notice and January 30th, 2021 for the 48-hour notice, thus meeting the requirements of open government law. I would like to acknowledge Congressman Mike Sinicolas, who has joined here today, and my colleagues, Senator Amanda Shelton, Secretary, Senator Joanne Brown, Senator Tony Atta, and Senator Chris Duenas. So thank you for joining me here today. The purpose of this informational hearing is to discuss the Guam Department of Labor's updates on the federal pandemic unemployment assistance programs. So I'd like to welcome the director and support staff of the Guam Department of Labor, and I thank them for their time in participating and preparing for this hearing. Again, the purpose of today's informational hearing is to obtain status updates regarding the previous unemployment program of 2020, the extended unemployment program, which was passed into law in December, its implementation, and the U.S. Department of Labor guidance. Additionally, I would like to cover any outstanding issues that Guam Department of Labor is facing and any solutions to resolving application and appeals. And I hope this hearing will give our community some much needed answers. It's urgent that we find ways to assist those in our community who no longer qualify for PUA. Its priority at this information hearing is to determine what the gaps are and who will be working to address them. And our office is committing to advocate for those that may be left out. So I'd like to now give the floor to Director David Della Sola. He has a presentation to provide an overview, and so we did provide questions in advance, and it includes everything. This presentation includes much of the questions that were asked. And after that point, we would then open up the floor for any questions. So thank you, Director, for your time, and we'll have the presentation up shortly. Or if you would have to provide any introductory remarks.
I'd like to welcome the 36th Guam Legislature. This is the first time I've got a chance to see some old faces and some new faces. And I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. I wanted to, of course, my new chair, Sabina, Senator Sabina Perez. Just want to say thank you for inviting me, and that I hope that I'm able to present some clarity on this program. Before I begin, I would be remiss if I didn't thank, my hardworking staff here at Guam Department of Labor. They've been working since March tirelessly, and we continue to work hard. And of course, the governor and lieutenant governor, they've always treated this program with high priority and allowed and supported me to ensure that I just kept the money going. And no matter when or how I had any problems, they were always there to ensure that the path was clear for us to keep getting the money out. And last, I wanted to thank DOA. Putting out $520 million every week to every other week is a lot of checks and deposits, along with what they normally do. And they've always stepped up, and you'd be surprised how much work it is we have hundreds of returns from deposits, checks returns, addresses, reconciliations, and they've always been there to help us, and I wanted to thank DOA. So I just thought I'd give a quick summary. There's basically what we consider Tier 1 PUA and Tier 2 PUA. The Tier 1 PUA is the original program, which was implemented on the 27th of January to the 26th or the 27th of December. And that was pretty straightforward. On the 27th of March, President Trump signed the CARES Act. The 28th of April, we put in a budget request for $924 million, which subsequently got approved. Then on May 23rd, we got 276 million transferred to the payment management system for us to draw down. And at the end of May, we started and implemented the PUA program on Higher Guam. There's a lot of things that went involved and a lot of things that we did, but I'd like to just tell you that at the year end, on the 26th, we were authorized to pay 554 for drawing down, and we managed to put out $520 million for the year 2020. And out of that, about 42, almost 43 million were on taxes. So I just wanted to kind of say the last batch for the program for the year was December 29th. We put out 4.8 million. And just in December alone, when we were on that aggressive payment, we put out $60 million worth of PUA. And total, we have about 30,000 claimants in our system, paid claimants, not total claimants, because that's excluding 93,000 fraud DQs that hit us, and with an estimated over $1 billion worth of fraud claims. And we've been aggressively putting in and trying so many different fraud measures. We have about really a half a dozen really strong ones that have allowed us to basically keep them at bay enough for us to be aggressive in the payouts. So in 2021, in the Pua II program, so far on the 19th was our last batch, and that was almost $21 million. And I'd like to announce that this Tuesday, tomorrow, we're going to batch, and it will be the first time that we're going to batch all filed claims, no dates. If you got a filed clean claim in, you're going to be batched all the way up until the time that they batch the file. And that is a huge feat for us. And we've been really aggressive in trying to keep the fraud out and the clean claims in. And I also want to say thanks to my staff who worked over the weekend, that we got 30,000 1099s folded and put in envelopes and mailed out on time by the deadline. And it's also available on each of the claimants' dashboard, so they choose to download and print out instead of waiting for the mail. So real quickly, just a quick outline on some of the new changes with the Pua II. President Trump signed it December 27th, and it basically extended the program from the 27th through the 10th of April. Between the 27th and the 14th is the regular period for the new FPUC, which was established, which basically is an 11-week program. So if you expired with 39 weeks, you were given 50 weeks additional. And if you add that up, that'll take you to the 13th of March. And the FPUC was put back on, but it was reduced from 600 down to 300. So now with the 375 weekly benefit amount, a 345 weekly benefit amount, the 300 added on makes it 645 for the maximum amount of payment, the assistance that you can get for the week. The new law, like I said, extended the cap from 39-week program to 50 weeks. And claimants that were expired or maxed out on the 39 weeks previous before the end of the PUA program were allowed to start filing their 40th week after, which was basically January 2nd, the first work week on the new program. So some of the changes is if you are new to filing a claim before the 27th, you are able to file as far back as the date that you were affected by the COVID as far as employment, meaning as far back as the 27th of January. But after the 27th of December, if you file a new claim, you're only allowed to go back to December 1st. And we went live after the 27th when Trump signed it. We went live with our program 100% live on January 15th. A couple days later, we went half live, meaning you were still able to go in and if you were eligible and file the claims, we weren't just paying for it. So we went 100% live at midnight, the 15th of January. Also, some of the new stuff that will be coming out is go ahead.
Sorry, Director. I do appreciate this, but I was wondering if you can maybe start on the presentation. I think some of the visuals might help reinforce.
The presentation, that's not my presentation. Okay. Let me go back and explain. That was a US DOL. I've had a half a dozen technical assistant meetings with US DOL. And last Friday was the last one. I think it was at 4 o'clock in the morning, okay, somewhere. And I just gave you the packet of all the PowerPoint just so you get an idea of what we go through on a typical TA meeting. And it's got a lot of good information. Some of the stuff, like what I'm covering, is very similar, but that's not my presentation.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to give it to the senators so that they can see what I do at 4 o'clock in the morning when we have those technical assistants and some of the information that they provide for us and they expect us to implement and follow.
Yeah, just to clarify, can we just go back and clarify the PUA from the FPUC as far as the new legislation? So if you can just maybe go back and discuss that a little bit more, because I think it might have went by really quickly. So as far as PUA is concerned versus FPUC, can you make that distinction with this new legislation?
Okay, so no problem. So the PUA, the WBA, the weekly benefit amount is $345, and basically this new program continued it. Everything's the same as far as with PUA, as far as the weekly benefit amount, and instead of it being a 39-week program, it changed it to a 50-week program, and which the regular period, like I said, was the 27th of December through March 13th, which will give it an additional 11 weeks to those who had 39 weeks. Where the little caveat is after the 13th USDOL calls, there's a phase out period, which if you're one of those claimants who haven't reached their 50th week by the 13th of March, then you can continue to file just the PUA. The FPUC ends on the 13th of March, the new $300 FPUC. So the 27th of December to March 13th is the new FPUC period and the regular PUA period. But then they allow for a phase out period, is what they call it, up to April 10th. For those people who haven't reached their 50th week, you can continue to file and get just the PUA up until April 10th, and then it shuts down completely, 100%.
Okay, and so
question?
Yeah, yes, and just to clarify for the public that, so FPUC ends at March 13th. It doesn't, there's no phase out period
there's no phase out period. Just like the last FPUC, they had a definite period of time, and that period ends March 13th.
Okay.
Done.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
So if you qualify, you can get basically 645 up until March 13th. In that case, if you have additional weeks left, they can phase it out. And at that point, you'd be receiving 345 versus the 645 weekly if you do qualify. So I think maybe we should focus a little bit more on the eligibility, right? So the latest program letter was dated January 8th. Is that correct?
That's a learning, that was the latest guide that was released, 1620 change 4.
Right, and that's for the PUA.
Yes.
Okay, and so in that, there was under eligibility, so all of this language was taken from the CARES Act. And because of the I guess the guidance that was released, there was some change in eligibility. Can you explain that? What was the change in this latest guidance? And is it derived from law, or is it just because it was through the Department of Labor's changes?
This is, I'll do the best I can. Included in your the information I sent you, I sent to all the senators.
Yeah.
These are the 11 eligible reasons that you can collect PUA. Everybody that is eligible for PUA has to fit in one of these 11 categories. This was from the CARES Act 1. The initial, they're basically a spin-off. A lot of it is spin-off from the DUA. But these are the guiding eligible requirements that you must meet. So no matter what if you qualify for PUA, you have to follow one of these 11 criteria. I sent it to you.
Right. And
now the confusion that was presented not only by us, by about 15 to 20 other states, is when they first were giving us guidance and information. Remember, we don't have a UI program, regular unemployment. They were talking about the WBA, and that was 345. And for us, that's for PUA. But for the rest of the nation, there's what's called a WBI for UI and for all the other stuff. So when they were talking about reduced hours or partial pay, partial unemployment, they were talking about the WBA and how it's treated as a whole and giving us the earning disregard. So they never differentiated, oh, this is just for the PUA. This is the WBA for the whole program, for everybody nationwide, including PUA, including unemployment insurance and PEUC and all the other programs that the states get. So we don't have UI. So we don't get a lot of the normal, regular employees who normally would be in reduced hours or regular employment. Most of them would fall under your basic UI program. The PUA was designed for everybody that was self-employed, gig workers, and maybe those few that don't fall into UI fall under PUA. And that's how they covered the whole gamut, the whole pie for the states. Now, we only get that one slice, PUA. So they say, well, since you don't have UI, everybody must fit in the PUA program. So that's where we talked about the reduced hours, this and that. They never differentiated it. I never caught it. We just assumed and that we went on. And as us with a lot of other states. So with the new program that came out, USDOL surprised us and said that, and made emphasis that they're working with several states to correct this, and that under the JJ, if you read JJ in your
Right.
eligible, it says the individual's place of employment is closed as a direct result of COVID-19 public emergency. And they're saying that there is no mention about reduced hours or allows it. And that's when I said, well, it was implied. And that was Congress's intention. And I agree with the congressman that why would anybody not allow it? And they said, well, unfortunately, Guam, you only got the PUA. In the States, they got the UI, they got everything else. So it's very clear. Your place of employment must be closed. And so you can't, if you hire somebody and somebody's working for you, your place of employment isn't closed, and let alone reduced hours. That's the long and short of it. So then I go, well, then why do you even give us an earning disregard? Why do you even give us reduced hours if it's not allowed? And they said, well, there are some circumstances when it would be allowed under the PUA program. And of course I said, well, what is that? And if you look under DD, Delta Delta, it talks about a child or person in the household giving caregiving, or if your kids are out of school because of the pandemic, you need to watch the kids. So a person or a husband and wife may work part-time and have to take care of the kids part-time. So then if that's your case, then you would claim your income at the reduced level, and you would use the DD reason as why it is allowable. Then I hit them with about 3 or 4 other questions of possible eligibilities, and they're looking into it. I kind of caught them by surprise, but that's the gist of the whole reduced hours and why they're saying it didn't change, Dave. You just didn't catch it along, but we understand that many states, CNMI, didn't catch it. So you need to show good faith correction and get it fixed moving forward. This would have been all moot if we didn't have a PUA program, a second PUA program. The first PUA program would have been expired. It would have just been moot. But so moving forward, any new claimants, I can't change the past, and I'm not going to go there. So if you're reduced hours, you got those payments, but moving forward, they made it quite clear in multiple technical assistant meetings that moving forward, if you show good faith efforts in the changing it, then, everything will be okay. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, thank you for lobbying on that regard. But I just want to, for the audience, I wanted to point out JJ. So in the CARES Act, they provided a list of different examples of eligibility. And
Yes.
so the infamous JJ basically is the individual's place of employment is closed as a direct result of COVID-19 public health emergency. So in one of the examples, they write, if a business has multiple parts and one or some of those parts is shut down due to restrictions imposed by COVID-19, affected staff from the parts of the business that shut down may be eligible for PUA. For example, a business may include both a restaurant and a brewery. If the individual's place of employment is the restaurant and the restaurant is shut down because of COVID, even if the brewery continues to operate, the individual who was employed in the restaurant may be eligible for PUA. And then it goes on to say in this particular guidance, which is of controversy and hopefully we can change, an individual who's working reduced hours while his or her place of employment continues to operate does not satisfy the conditions to self-certify under item JJ. So yes.
They basically just gave you clarity that they understand a business may not just be one operating entity. You could have, another example, a bar and a restaurant, or a bar and whatever. There's two. So if there are divisions that are closed and those people only work for that division, they don't cross back and forth, then those affected staff of that closed division, would qualify for PUA, but not the part that is still open.
Mhm.
So they're just basically giving you an example of how if you have a multiple business corporation that has different divisions and some of them were closed down, but one part of that business is open, that you don't, and not everybody falls in that umbrella.
Mhm.
They did say, though, if you have employees that are crossing back and forth, then you don't have a distinct separation. They wouldn't qualify.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. Okay, so so you mentioned, maybe you're not willing to share with us, but there are other ways to address this as far as closing the gap in this particular case?
And those are certainly something that, until I get all the feedback from the questions that I asked from USDOL, that could be, because there could be more changes, there could be more interpretations, and not everything could have been, there could be other things going on. I posed some questions that could still have a few more ramifications to our island. And so we're kind of waiting for that. Unfortunately, when sometimes you get attorneys involved, it takes longer than when you just get opinions. So that's if you want me to jump in, and that's where I reached out to the congressman and to the governor as far as possible solutions from my perspective that could be that could remedy it. One possibility, of course, if you look at KK in the, I don't know if everybody has it, all the other senators, but if you look at KK, it reads, this is the additional reason for eligibility. The individual meets any additional criteria established by the Secretary, that's the Secretary of Labor, for unemployment assistance under this section. Approved criteria clarified. So the Secretary of Labor approved one additional criteria that wasn't and normally would be covered in the AA through JJ. And that was the gig workers and the self-employed. If they open up and they're trying to do business, but they have a severe reduction of income as they are open, then they could still qualify and use the KK reason. And they would just claim whatever small income that they had from trying to open up. And you can see that that is a pretty big help for our island too. All those who are self-employed or gig workers. Now they can try to get some business. They can try to open up. They can try to see if they can survive. And if they're not, or they're slowly building up, they still can qualify. And the other reason that I feel is a possible solution came from an amendment from Senator Schumer when the Senate had their version of the new CARES Act and the Democrats had their version. And I'm armchairing it, so I could be killing the explanation, but don't kill the messenger. I'm just trying to give it. He came up with his own version, which was Bill, whatever it was, 477. And in there, he gave section 303, gave clarification of access to pandemic unemployment assistance for the workers at businesses that have reduced staff due to the pandemic. And if you take that amendment, so you're making me jump here. So right now that the JJ would basically, which reads now, the individual place of employment is closed. If you add his amendment to it, then it says the individual, make sure I got the right page. So the new reading for JJ, and if you listen to it, you tell me if it satisfies it. The individual's place of employment is closed, or its operations are otherwise curtailed, including by reduced hours of operation, staffing levels, occupancy, or other changes that are recommended or required as a direct result of the COVID-19 public emergency. That covers everything. Now, I know the congressman can say, give more light on why it didn't get out, it didn't get passed, but I will tell you, and USDOL did affirm it to me, if that was in the new CARES Act 202, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. That would basically cover every single thing that could go, that businesses can close, open, reduce, occupancy, staff, everything would be covered, and still allow that as a JJ reason instead of your business is closed.
Right. So then basically we have two options, the administrative fix and the legislative fix, congressional fix.
That is what, from my research, what I was able to come up with. I'm sure the congressman may have other alternatives, or the governor may have some other ones, but those two I vetted through USDOL, and they agreed either one could be used. They didn't say anything about the chances of either one being done. That I can't speak of. But all I can tell you is I was trying to figure out what I could think of were possible solutions. So that was, I wrote the letters, I forwarded to the governor, and, we will continue to work with the congressman and the governor and myself wherever I can, and figure out what is the quickest and easiest solution. I know the congressman wrote to the President Biden and the administration to remedy this. That is a great idea, and we should all join them. And if you're going to turn to me and say, Dave, what is it that we can do? From my armchairing, and like I said, from my pay grade, draft resolutions, letters of support to go with the congressman and with the governor's letters to show that we are one island, and we all agree with me that this is catastrophic to our island and we need it to be remedied. And if we can collectively show support from everywhere, then hopefully they'll hear our voice and something can be changed.
Okay, thank you. So maybe now is a good time to provide open the floor to Congressman Nicholas in regards to his efforts to try to close the gaps.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Dave, for all of your hard work, and to the agency. I'd like to, of course, recognize our speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Also, of course, you being here is a normal course of business, but having the leadership participate in the hearing is always a plus. Several items I want to clarify. First and foremost, with respect to the legislation that was introduced by the Senate. The reason why that legislation didn't move forward was because it was determined that that language was not necessary to continue paying reduced hours workers. In fact, the opposite actually would become a concern, in that if that legislation was entertained and it passed, then the argument could be made that all previous reduced hours cases that were entertained and funded were outside of statute. And I think all of my fellow lawmakers can understand that when you introduce clarifying language on something going forward, you're basically saying that that was not the case going backwards. And so the reason why that legislation was not entertained and it didn't get included in the extension, and I want to underscore that, the extension of the CARES Act, is because doing so would have highlighted the fact that there shouldn't have been payments to begin with. And that is absolutely not the case. When you read the CARES Act legislation, it was broadly written and it was done so very specifically. My office actually coordinated very closely with the committee to make sure it was drafted this way. And it basically reads that any person who does not qualify for unemployment compensation will qualify for pandemic unemployment assistance. And so that would include reduced hours workers. That's why reduced hours workers were paid all the way up until December 27th on the first phase of the CARES Act. And that's why we contend that they should continue to be paid now. One of the different avenues that we've taken is we've absolutely reached out to the Biden administration. We've gotten a letter signed by members of Congress from across the country, states like California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, all to try and create this stopgap, so to speak. But the reality is that the language in the omnibus bill that we passed in December did not alter the eligibility qualifications for those who are receiving PUA. That was never changed in December. And so anyone who was extended, and I do want to highlight that, the language in the omnibus that was passed in December extended the eligibility period from 39 weeks to 50 weeks. If the eligibility period is extended and no change in eligibility is mandated, then everyone who was able to qualify before should continue to qualify. Mm-hmm. And that's basically the position that we're taking. That's the position that we've confirmed with our committees of jurisdiction here in the Congress. And that's the clarification that we're seeking from the Biden administration effective January 8th. To clarify as an update on that, we have communicated with our liaisons. We've communicated with the White House Office of Legislative Affairs. They are aware of it. The political appointments by the Biden administration to the Department of Labor are still in process. They're still staffing up in the Department of Labor. And so there are no political appointees to be able to step in from my end and make these clarifications. But what I was hoping we could get some clarification on is whether or not this turn of events has been protested by the Department of Labor and taken up the chain in the agency, so we can get in writing, not only from the individual who is currently passing through this new guidance, but from that individual's boss, and that boss's boss, and that boss's boss, all the way up the chain, so that we can have as much of a paper trail as possible to clearly indicate that this is an interpretation that is prevalent throughout the agency, and it's not just an interpretation that's coming from a more narrow segment of the agency. And then just to further add on the clarifications of interpretation when it comes to closing, whether a business is closed or opened. When we have executive orders that are reducing operational capacities to 50%, to 25%, or to 75%, you are in effect closing the business. You're closing down portions of the business. And so when you have portions of the business that are closed, I would proffer, and I would protest very strongly the Department of Labor that just because people are working in those businesses doesn't necessarily mean those businesses are entirely open for operation. A business should not have to bifurcate its in-room dining from its dining out, for example. And if people are still working to facilitate the dining out operation of a business that under normal circumstances would be having people eating in the restaurant, then technically the dining in component of the business is closed. And those workers who are impacted by that, to include those who are working reduced hours only in the takeout section of the business, should be eligible for reduced hours compensation. I mean, these are all different scenarios that I think are not only legitimate, but they've actually been the case over the past year. And so we need to make sure that we're not acquiescing to what Department of Labor is saying, and that we are very strongly protesting what I've clarified are very, very wrong interpretations of the statute, and really hammering the point home that the law for eligibility has not changed, and that those who are eligible all the way up to December 27th and had their timelines extended with the second phase of the PUA should continue to have access to whatever they were accessing prior to December 27th. Those are the communications. This is nothing new that I'm sharing with the director, but you know, these set of circumstances that we're currently under at this point in time are not the norm, and for a variety of reasons, I can attest that. First of all, we have clarified by visiting the agency websites throughout the country in various states, they're still accepting reduced hours PUA applications from what we've seen. And also, in order to qualify for FPUC, the additional 300, you need to be receiving at least $1 of PUA. If there was a across the nation cutoff of PUA for reduced hours workers, there would also be an across the nation cutoff of FPUC, and the public outcry out here will be deafening. But we're not seeing any of that. As a matter of fact, when we were trying to circulate our letter for support, we got feedback from many offices saying, hey, you know, my member wouldn't have a problem signing on to this, but they're just not seeing this as a problem in their district. So we need to really make sure that what is being applied to us on Guam is actually being applied across the country. And we need to make sure that, you know, there is not only equity in the policy, but that the various states are either being held to the same standards, that we can get greater consensus from other members out here that this is something that needs to be addressed, or we need to push back on the agency and take it up the chain and say, hey, you know, this isn't happening in these other places. Why is it happening here? And so I'm hoping that this can provide at least some clarity on my end as to why we're having some challenges in terms of getting this addressed. But my feedback that I have gotten from our liaisons and from White House Leg Affairs is that this is absolutely not something the Biden administration supports. And if we need to wait for the political solution when the political staffing takes effect for the agency, we can do that. But I'm hoping that we're building the necessary paper trails to illustrate that we've taken this up the chain on the agency side. And I'm open to any questions, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Congressman. So I apologize. I would like to recognize the Speaker, Therese Terlahi, and Senator Telotaitigui. They were here earlier, but I just needed to recognize them. So yeah, maybe if we can reserve, let's see, maybe just a couple questions for the Congressman, if there's any questions regarding the status. So I know there's a short timeline here. We're talking about March 14th. And then, so that's timeliness is probably going to be an issue here. Yeah, and of course, anything that we can do on our end to help support your efforts, I think, you know, please let us know. So yeah, it's just maybe if we can continue with the hearing. So having said that, Director Dave De La Sola, so what? So the Department of Labor is, you know, before we figure this out, before it gets, you know, before the guidance changes. So what type of notifications are you sending out to potential claimants? Because I know part of your responsibility is to provide that information. So what does the notifications look like on your end?
Thank you. And thank you, Congressman, for giving us an update. To the notifications as far as which ones, there's multiple notifications that will be going out and have been going out. So you have to be specific, or I'm not sure I understand the question.
So yeah, the point I'm trying to make is, you know, given the guidance that we have in regards to part-timers not being able to avail of you know, the extended PUA at this time. So what kind of guidance or notifications are you sending out to potential claimants?
When they log into their claims, there is a disclaimer that's going to be, they're going to come, the first thing they're going to see. And that's probably one of the strongest. And of course, there will be ads if they haven't gone out yet, stating that reduced hours is the only reason why we haven't pushed it all out yet, because I'm trying to get a sense of, there are some instances where reduced hours is allowable. And it would be confusing for me to say reduced hours aren't allowed without stating when they are allowed. And unfortunately, some of the ones that I'd like to put in there, I haven't gotten 100% thumbs up from USDOL. They're asking the question too. So I was ready to put out a disclaimer about reduced hours on the ads and in the radios and the newspapers, but I'm holding it off. I think there's been a lot of discussion through the newspapers, and you know me, I'm not shy with the radio either, and explaining what I mean by reduced hours, and that I don't like it as much as everybody else. And you know, the one thing me and the congressman definitely agree, even though we might have some slight differences on what the solutions are or perspectives. He's coming at it from the Congress end, which is what we need. And I'm coming at it from the USDOL running their program, and they give us the money. So if they tell me that this is not allowed, then I have to implement it. And he's right. I have protested. We have written letters. I have given them a lot of the questions that I agree with the congressman. There has not been any changing. Business has been forced to partially close and partially open. All those things have been addressed to me clearly by USDOL, and they keep pointing to the JJ, your business is closed. If you hire anybody, doesn't matter, part-time, full-time, security, your business can't be closed if it's done. And they agreed. There has been no change in the policy that there is no reduced hours that was ever allowed with PUA under JJ. That's the very beginning of the program. I disagree, and I also agree with the congressman on that. But this is what USDOL tells me. And I have protested. I know the governor is putting together a letter, and which we're writing. So we're even writing a letter to Al Stewart, the acting director of labor, secretary of labor. I had all his contacts and information. We're writing letters to him. And as far as the amendment, and I understand, because that was brought up, that if an amendment like that came in, what do you do? And the amendment had the second part of it, which basically said that the passage, that this amendment doesn't go into effect until the passage of this amendment, or it doesn't take effect upon passage. So it doesn't go back to the beginning. It goes back to when it passes. So if we were to go starting with the PUA II program, we're not looking at what happened in the PUA I. Moving forward, we're in recovery now. We're not in a shutdown, and we need this. And everybody can agree with us. And I agree with the congressman that we need to get, this is stifling our recovery. And we are protesting, and letters, you haven't heard me in any of these calls.
So yeah, I do understand, and thank you.
So yeah, there are notices that are going out. Until I get concrete on what is allowed, I know one bit was allowed under the JJ that I brought up to them that they didn't, they're saying yes, is if you, like a lot of our hotel workers, they were like, or a lot of workers, they're working full-time or their main job, and then they had a part-time job. So if I said, well, okay, so your main job is closed. So now you're qualified, but you still have a part-time job. And they came back to me in a couple hours and said, yes, I think you're right. That part-time job you claim as income because your main place of employment is closed. That's your qualifying event. And then there are some nuances. So I'm throwing boomerangs at them left and right to try to figure out how we can take care of some of these things. Why we wait for administrative or whatever kind of fixes out there. So I do want to say that the Congressman's right. We are protesting this vigorously, and we are singing one voice with the Congressman. And I understand what he's saying as far as that amendment. But if that amendment was part of the CARES Act and it went into effect at the start of the CARES 2, there is no other way of reading it that this would not be an issue today.
Okay. So
Madam Chair, may I make a quick suggestion on what could also possibly be a local remedy? I mean, if it really needs to get into these kind of technicalities, if I may.
Sure. Yes. You're
You know, if the situation is that USDOL is not accepting a reduced hours worker because their business is still open, then perhaps the local government can just do a quick batching and reissuance of business licenses to all existing businesses and have them issued a second business license as a pandemic business. And so, for example, if you're King's Restaurant, issue them a pandemic King's Restaurant business license. And then all the employees who are working on reduced hours are hired under that separate business license. And technically King's Restaurant proper is still closed. And so we can create a whole, paperwork issue and say that all those employees were no longer working at King's Restaurant because King's Restaurant is closed, but Pandemic King's is open and they're working reduced hours. And so they'll qualify for PUA because King's is closed, but Pandemic King's is open. I mean, we can do that. That's something that can be done as a paperwork issue if DOL really, US DOL really wants to create those kind of bureaucratic headaches. And that would allow everybody who is not working in King's and working in Pandemic King's to continue working reduced hours under the Pandemic King's business license while they're technically unemployed at King's. I mean, that can be done, but then that would just very clearly illustrate to US DOL how outrageous the notion is that this partial shutdown and these reduced hours are inapplicable because the business is technically not closed. And so locally, that's if we want to try and figure out how to fit, something into this outrageous interpretation from US DOL, we can. But I think that illustrating something as plain as that to them can also make it very clear that this is a very outrageous interpretation. And if they want us to go that route locally, we can, and everyone just has to get reissued a second business license to fit under these pandemic circumstances rather than the executive order is doing it. Or another option would be for it to be done by executive order. That by executive order, all businesses are hereby recognized as having two business licenses, one as their standard business license and another as a pandemic business license. And all employees working under these emergency circumstances are considered pandemic employees until such time they are rehired under their normal business license. And then technically they'll all be considered unemployed in their normal business license. So those are two local solutions that can be implemented. I think the executive order angle could be done in a 48-hour period. And then all those people can just start reapplying as technically being unemployed with King's. I don't know what that would do to the DOL Hire a Guam website, but I mean, that's another angle as well if we're trying to just figure out how to find ways around this very ridiculous set of circumstances that the island is facing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. Yeah, and I do think that it doesn't follow the spirit of the law. The CARES Act was there to support those that are unemployed, and being that Guam doesn't have an unemployment program, yeah, it doesn't make sense. So we do appreciate your efforts. So I want to move the conversation over to overpayments. So waiving of overpayments. So Director, can you just explain a little bit, give us a little background on there's a section in the guidance that talks about the potential to waive overpayments. Sorry, you're muted.
That one I knew was going to kill me, but yes. So overpayments. So initially when we implemented the PUA program and bought this package, we didn't have the overpayment module included in it because who could foresaw the difficulties of this and having so much overpayments. But we did get and add on the overpayment module, and it came into effect several weeks ago. And when it came into effect, the requirement for notification of all claimants who exhibit an overpayment kicked in, and that's why a large group of claimants were all of a sudden were notified through automation that an overpayment was found in their claim. And that is something that was always going to be an area of contention, because there are so many reasons for why there's overpayments. And as soon as you notify people of overpayments, I just want to let you know it's a very sticky subject to get into. A lot of the overpayments were done by the PPP program, when employers went back and paid employees for weeks, past weeks, and they filed for PUA. So they got paid double for the same day. Some people went ahead and filed for PUA even though they got the PPP. Some people filed for PUA when they were on leave, meaning the business closed, but they still chose to pay their employees. There are so many reasons for overpayment. There are some fraud, some not. And that's why each claim needs to be looked at individually. And then we get into, so now that they see an overpayment notice, they need to go in and look, why did they get it? One other very, very frequent reason is they incorrectly applied their income to their weekly benefit amount. So maybe they put the whole amount one day and they didn't spread it out. Some forgot to put in some of the income that they put in, and when we audited it, we noticed that they had other income, so they needed to put it in, and therefore there's an overpayment. Some forced the system into approving things by incorrectly asking questions, and that received overpayment. So there is a broad reasons for overpayment, and each one needs to be looked at. But I've noticed a lot of the claimants that make the most noise tend to be the ones that created human errors with their overpayment the most. So now comes in to something new that was just passed with this Tier 2, and that is the overpayment waiver. It was kind of upsetting to see the media put out there that says overpayments can be waived, you know, and kind of left it that, oh, everybody that has overpayments, you can get it waived now. And our calls are flooding for everybody wanting to get a waiver on the overpayments, when clearly there are strict criteria that needs to be followed for overpayments. And not to get into it too deeply, but Hawaii, we always have to resort to Hawaii's UI laws, since we have no UI guidances or laws. And their overpayment waivers are even stricter than the one that was moved forward by USDOL. And basically, the first thing, of course, you need to do before you do a waiver is, was there fraud? And that was there any evil intent? And there are some people that were fired, never worked, were a number of other reasons that didn't have nothing to do with the COVID, and they still filed and they still got overpayment. So automatically they would not be considered. Then there's fault that has to be looked to. And fault is not necessarily intentional, but also implies negligence, error in judgment, or inadvertence due to carelessness, meaning you didn't check into it. You didn't bother to look, or fault is so broad that I'm still reading it, all the legalese verbiage, so that I make sure that I apply it fairly and correctly. So first fault, fraud, then fault, and then comes in, okay, if it's no fault from the claimant and there's no fraud, now it comes to equity and good conscience. And there are steps to what is good equity and good conscience. So it's not just something that I can say, oh, Maria, I'll waive you. Oh, Joe Cruz, I'll waive you. Or I'll waive this, I'll waive that. It has to be done case by case, and it has to be well documented with the reasons, and then fairly applied to each individual, and cannot be done blanket. So therefore, I'm putting together an implementation of how we're going to do it and stuff. But it is something that, of course, I want to do to those who aren't at fault, who owe $15,000 and in good conscience pay it when they honestly thought that they were eligible and they applied with no fault of their own. And of course I will use it to the best of my ability, because it would only help our people. And but I have to be careful that I don't overuse it, or what USDOL says, abuse it. So that kind of gives you where we're at with the waiver.
Okay, so if, let's say I'm unemployed and I'm interested in filing a claim, and I'm unsure, whether I qualify, what sort of recommendation can you give to the public, being that the implementation protocol is still in the works?
Well, as I tell everybody that's out there, be careful, because if you have small overpayments and it was just decided, and it was fair, if it was a PPP and you got PUA at the same time, I'm not going to waive somebody who got paid twice for the same day, or, but I'm just saying everybody has a right to file for a waiver. But when you file for a waiver, you also welcome us to look into your claim. And when we look into claims, a lot of times we find problems with the claims, and you could have more problems than you asked for. So you need to do some due diligence before you ask, and make sure that you look at the reasons behind the overpayment. And if it was legitimately that you had income and you needed to spread it out through the week, it's not just a one-day occurrence when you got the check, then look at it, and if it's reasonable, then you need to overpay. Then you need to pay it back and see us about getting under a payment plan or to pay it. But if they understand the reasons how I can waive it, then by all means, request for a waiver when you get the overpayment.
So in regards to the extended PUA, what recommendation would you give to the public in regards to filing a claim? So to prevent anything as far as overpayments is concerned.
That's a good question. Some of these overpayments are also, a lot of it are done by human error. And that's why you kind of go right into another section about understaffing or answering our phones. There are so many people on this island that are not computer literate. And not only they're not computer literate, but none of them have ever seen a federal application process like PUA. And we remember at the beginning of the PUA program, we had 70, 80 people at GCC helping everybody file claims. We had the consulate office at FSM helping them file for the Micronesians, the FAS citizens. All these people filed. A lot of them got their 39 weeks, and now they have to reopen what's called reopen their expired claim. That means they have to go back in and ask it. The personal information is all there, but they're going to ask you a lot of those questions. Are you still unemployed? Are you still this? Have you ever been working? And a lot of them need to be handheld again. And when you just turn on a program that was signed on the 27th and you turn it on the 15th, that doesn't give everybody, the floodgate opens and everybody needs assistance. Everybody needs help. When we thought that we were winding down a program, and it takes a month to train somebody decent enough to handle a PUA claim. And so you can just imagine that the problems, I know I took a long way to answer your question. You answer the questions and make sure that you answer them accurately. And if you have reduced hours, then hold off until we get a resolution, or you're just going to have to stop filing, one or the other. Because I don't want you to file, and then if it comes back that there's no way reduced hours are going to be eligible, then you have overpayments. And then when I told everybody not to file, you can't come back to me and say, please waive it. You know what I mean? So please just make sure that you do the best you can. And everybody, I mean, I got a text today that said, thank you, director. I don't know how she got my number. I was able to get through. It wasn't that hard to get through. I was helped. They're so nice. I get that from the public everywhere I go. So you can get through to the numbers. I understand. You can get through. You may have to be diligent. We will help you. But because we help everybody and handheld everybody, we're on the call for 30 minutes to 40 minutes. We only have so many people, so many calls we can handle. We handle 200 people a day up at Dedido, and when Jutnya is open, we handle 200 up a day up at there. So we are cranking through this. We are paying $520 million worth of claims. So we're working, and it is successful. But you always have that 5%, 10% that need that extra help. And unfortunately, 5-10% is 3,000 people. and we're just no way we're going to set up for a short program to handle 3,000 people knocking on our door. So we just work 6 days a week and do the best that we can.
Okay, so you don't see a satellite type of outreach at this point,
Well, we do have the Dedido place open, and we're going to reopen Jotnya soon again. It was closed to do the 1099s. We had to all hands on deck to get 30,000 of those things mailed out, and we will eventually start doing walk-ins there too, once we take care of the appointment demands first. So like we were doing previously, in November, we had both places open and we were doing walk-ins. Everything was going smoothly. We were handling it because we were winding down on the program. So now that it's started back up again without warning, you have so many people that are needing help. And yes, we will open more satellites, but we are constantly filling our pipeline of hiring and training new people.
So I noticed in some of the documents, they said that there's appropriations that are given to the agencies to assist or to administer the program. Is there an opportunity to request more funding for that?
We do get funding for hiring. What we don't get, of course, is detailed appointments. And that's how we kicked off, remember, with GCC, when all of Guam was closed, basically, most of it. we had like 30, 40 detail appointments to us from key people from the different agencies. Most of those agencies are, of course, back to open, and those key people who are key people to those agencies are back to work. And I think we only have 1 or 2 people that are still detailed to us from those existing. So, you know, we'll get through this, and we will handle it as best we can. And you can get through. It's only to March, so to bring a lot of people and get them trained, and then the program closes again, economically doesn't make sense. So we're just trying to do the best we can and bringing on handfuls so that we can train and work at the same time. Because if we bring large cohorts, you have to pull resources to train them, and that's what we can't afford to do. So we're working on it, and it's an evolution.
Thank you for your hard work. So going back to backdating claims, can you provide information on the backdating of the Tier 1 PUA, the first PUA, and now the new PUA?
Well, simply, if you're a new claimant and you're filing after the 27th of December, then by the new program, you can only go back to December 1st or whenever the date is that you were laid off or, you know, affected by the, you know, your employment was affected by the COVID. So if you missed out, which of course, when you reach any expiration date, there's a panic of people trying to file that put it off. And if they missed it, then they missed it. You can't go back before December 1st.
Okay.
And so, you know, moving forward, backdating only till December 1st is what's allowed.
So for the previous PUA program, is it still available to backdate if you haven't completed your 39 weeks?
Yes. So if you, let me put it this way, if this answers your question. If you filed your claim but had problems and you couldn't successfully get it completed and get paid, and we need to go in and help you finish it, if you're still in that Tier 1, then you can still go back. We will still backdate all your weeks, get you fixed, and pay you for all that period.
Okay.
But that you have to have a claim entered or in before the 27th. And that's why you have automation. You can't make it up or try to go in now and change it.
So the 27th of December you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When the new Tier 2 PUA program kicked in,
Okay.
and the old one expired.
So does that also encompass appeals, right? So there are certain cases that are being appealed. So that would cover that? Should the
Yes.
determination?
Yes. Appeals or anything like that we are handling now. We're getting through them fairly well, quickly. A lot of them are even adjudicated before they even reach the appeals, because as we educate them on why they have an overpayment or why they were DQ'd, they either produce extra documents to prove their point and we approve them, or we explain it to them so that they understand why they were DQ'd or overpaid, and then they withdraw their appeals. So 40% of the appeals that come in are not even say maybe 30% are dropped before they even get a date set because of re-educating or re-examining, redetermining. Because of course, if there's any way possible that we can approve you, we will.
Okay, and so what is the timeline for these appeals for them to be finalized?
Well, an appeals, the best scenario I can give you is kind of like a court case. It depends on how complicated the appeal is or how straightforward and easy it is. Some appeals that we get when the people don't agree because they got PPP and they got PUA at the same time, they still want to fight it. Those run fairly quickly because there's no way you can get 2 federal funded program assistance for the same day. And those are fairly quick and easy. And then of course, the more complicated ones might take it. But when you're giving a notice of an overpayment, or you see that you're DQ'd, you're notified through your email on your for your claim, and then you have 10 days to check the box that you want to appeal. That's the time where it might take some time, but you will be notified by us that you will be given an appeal date. And then once you're given the appeal date, that's when you say half of them drop or 40% drop off. But when you're given that date, usually within 2 weeks after your hearing, whether it's formal or informal determination, usually within 2 weeks, you're given a decision. So we run fairly quickly, quickly. The longest time is for when you send your 10-day, you send your request in. We have a couple hundred appeals, so we get to them, oldest to newest, and we work our way down.
So the average time would be roughly around a month, is that correct?
I can't say there's an average, because there's some that might be waited longer or not, some that are a lot faster. But once you hear from us about your appeal was received and we're scheduling, it's typically less than 30 days before you'll get a decision.
So after the hearing, though, less than 30 days?
After you are called in to get scheduled.
Okay. What is normally the timeline from, so the scheduling, how long will it take for scheduling to occur?
You have to understand that if we would have expired the program, then all those staff that answer calls and are helping, they were all going to shift towards appeals and overpayments. And we would have concentrated on that. That was that's the plan I had laid out nicely. December 27th, done. Then all that staff would shift over. They're all very well trained. So, it could be up to a month. It depends. We're hitting it pretty good now. So I think it's just that we are scrambling to try to get this new PUA program up and all the notifications out and get the waiver implementation in place and meet all that. Just look at this guidance and if you look at that, you'll see some of the things that we need to put together and get together and work. That is not what you see in the front, but it happens in the back. But yeah, I'd say a month I'm starting to feel comfortable.
Okay, so I believe you requested a recess, is that correct? Did you want a recess?
I'll take a recess. I didn't request it.
But I'm getting something in my chat that there was a request from
Okay.
Department of Labor.
We're not almost done.
No, yeah,
I
we're almost
have
done.
another meeting.
Yeah, we have less than, okay, so might as well just go through. Yeah, I just got a notice from my staff that there was a request for recess, but are you okay to keep going?
I'm okay. If your fellow colleagues are okay, we'll just keep muscling through this.
Okay.
I'll try to keep my answers shorter.
No, this is great.
No promises.
Okay, so I know I kind of veered away from the initial questions that I sent you, but
I
let's.
had a nice speech all laid out. Now we're doing.
Yeah, I wanted to get to the heart because I know you only have like a short time to spend today, so I wanted to get to
Sure. I'm
meat of
here to speak with whatever you guys like to speak about.
Okay, so yeah, so is there anything in the new program, so other than the eligibility change that we discussed, the overpayments, are there other terms that you would like to share regarding the new PUA program?
Sheesh, I'm tired of trying to figure out what my notes are, so I'll just speak off the top of my head. So you will start seeing more notifications going out. And one of those hit last week, and that was the refusal to work notification that is required under the second PUA Tier 2 program. That is that we gave a email address, refusal to work at dol.guam.gov. And that email address is for employers. So if they call back their employees and they don't want to come back because they want to, and I'll just simplify it, because they want to continue the PUA, or they refuse to come back to work, then the employer can choose to basically email us with their names, and we will start taking action. Now, once you, or let me put it this way, once you're an employer and you decide that you want to do that, on our website is a form to fill out, because we have to ensure that not only the employer, but we still have to ensure the employee's rights are given and observed. So we're not going to just take the employer's word as gospel. So if you report that Tun Marie didn't want to come into work because she didn't want to, when you asked her to, then this is what has been in the newspapers and in the media, if you haven't seen it already. But basically, we will inform the employee of their rights, and we will check why is it that you don't want to come back to work. And if they have a valid reason, such as I caught COVID, I couldn't go back to work, but my employer was mad and he fired me, then we wouldn't stop their PUA. But if it was because, yeah, I want to keep getting the PUA, I don't make enough, I make more in PUA than I do at work, then I'm going to say, sorry, that is not a legitimate reason. That, it's assistance, not a job. So we will turn around and then cancel it. So that is one of the notifications. Another notification is something that the states were remiss at doing, but we are, is that you need to have documentation. It is now a requirement to all initial claimants, and they're getting a lot more stringent in the dual verification of your identification. The states were giving and approving everybody left and right. And that's why you have states like California giving out $11 billion in fraud. And being a small island, we wanted those separation letters. We want to see a clear ID, of who you are, and, and anything additional. Now, you cannot even submit a claim unless you have those in place. And those notifications will go out, even though it's something that we already did. And am I missing anything else? Of course, the reduced hours, they're just clamping down that the 11 criteria for the PUA are followed. And they are clamping down on all those states and those places who did not follow it. I asked them, I said, am I the only idiot that's following this? They said, no, Dave, you're not. We are making sure every state is in compliance. How well that is being done, that was their answer to me. So I'm not going to research which state is or which one's not, who's trying to get away with it, who's not. I need to comply once guidance is given to me in order to ensure that I have a good program. As far as the second program, a lot of the stuff is behind closed doors, things that we need to do. As far as the public is concerned, just make sure if you're laid off or you have any changes in your employment, that you give those supporting documents. You may need to, we might need to request for additional identification if that is something that we're trying to get research and make sure that we get down. But other than that, just keep filing your weekly claims. and we'll keep helping people. You'd be surprised how many people need help and handheld just to file their weekly claims. So we take care of them today, and then 3 weeks later, they call us back up and say, I have 3 weeks still that I need to file. And we have to do it again for them. As much as we try to teach them, it's just the way it is here on the island. And that's why in the States, you don't get that help. You're pretty much on your own to figure out how to do things online. And we are different here. We handheld you, hold you. We will walk you through it. We'll try to explain it. But if, you know, Tun Marie comes to us who doesn't even own a computer, doesn't even know what a Wi-Fi is, and is affected, then we will handhold her and complete her claim and make sure that we handle them. And we do that. We do them in groups. We have groups of people come in that are in that kind of a situation, and we handle them all at one time.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your hard work. And yes, we'll be looking forward to when your satellite locations are going to be opening up. So
Additional satellite locations.
additional satellites. And so when will they be operating? When do you think that will be?
They operate, well, the Dedido one, and the Jotnya was just closed down. It was operating Monday through Friday, 9 to, it's on my notes somewhere, 9 to 5. So appointments are given right now, and they're coming in. But as those appointments demands decrease, then we open it up for walk-ins. We're trying to limit the lines,
Okay.
as you can imagine, and the appointments are the best way to do it. So if you call in and you get through, which you can, set an appointment. If you really need to have individualized assistance, you'll get an appointment and we will help you. That way you don't tie up my phone line so much.
Okay. All right. So at this moment, I know we only have like half hour left. So I want to open the floor to my colleagues for questions. So I would like to recognize Senator Duenas. I know you had your hand up earlier, and I just want to recognize you. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have two questions. I think it's important, Madam Chair, and thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Director De La Sola, that we be, extremely clear here, because I once again, I heard two different positions on the PUA with regard to reduced work hours. So I just wanted to get it straight from the Congressman. Congressman, do you continue to maintain that those payments are eligible and should be paid?
Yes, I do continue to maintain that. And I believe that the guidance that's been provided by the U.S. Department of Labor is inconsistent with statute. We have confirmed that, and that any qualifying requirements prior to December 27th should continue to be qualifying requirements after December 27th.
Okay, Congressman, I was wondering, in your discussion with other jurisdictions, is one of the purposes perhaps on allowing for that is to kind of smooth out the ability of recovery for those who will have still employment opportunities, but of course with reduced hours, and then that payment under PUA kind of backs that up as we move into economic recovery.
That is absolutely correct, Senator. The purpose of PUA was never to force businesses to either choose to open up 100% or close down 100%. It was intended in the spirit of the law and in the language that the PUA funding would be available in order to support economic activity and to allow for those who are in any way adversely affected by the pandemic to not have their economic circumstances further exacerbate the pandemic consequences that we're suffering from. And so, yes, it was intended to absolutely smooth out not only the closure of businesses, but as businesses intended to continue to reopen. And that's why, you know, this interpretation that we're facing on the island is entirely inconsistent with the whole reason why PUA was established to begin with.
Okay, I think we're going to have to, Madam Chair, continue to wrestle with this. Thank you for your thoughts, Congressman. Director De La Sola, I don't remember off the top of my head in the last reading of the CRER as you know, we are in the planning stages for the upcoming budget. Is it separate in terms of the current income tax and whatever remittances under the current program with this assistance on how much is being paid to revenue tax, or is it sort of commingled as, and do you have a dollar amount at this time in terms of what's been remitted in terms of taxes?
Yes, I think I mentioned it at the very beginning of the, that there was like 42 million that was collected. Now, how much of that will stay in it, meaning a lot of them will file, and then since there is no other income, a lot of them, some of it will stay because it's only 10%. So I figure about 2,500 or 2,400 out of that, of each individual claimant. So it's hard for me to say, but I think majority of that will stay. Will stay with us because, you know, they collect a total of about almost 24,000, and that means they only had 2,400 withheld. So, and then you multiply that, and that's where you get your 42 million. And so I think that's I leave that to the tax people, how much is that's going to stay and what's not going to stay.
Sure.
That's how much was reported from our system.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, for us, as you know, Director, you know, going into this next round of having to determine what we're going to be looking at for this budget, and especially since the discussion of PUA II and all the programs, I mean, we're going to have to consider what we anticipate, and I know it's going to, you know, change based on filing returns and everything else. But yeah, I didn't catch that number from the beginning. So thanks for that, and I appreciate your responses. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. So did you clarify the question about part-time, Senator? Was that clear to you as far as who can apply for this new round?
You know, I really think we're going to have to, you know, Madam Chair, I really encourage that we have this discussion, you know, with the governor, with the director. I mean, I'm having a little bit of difficulty when we say that, you know, the position of the congressman is Congress and the executive position is the executive position based on guidance from USDOL. I mean, I'm just wrestling with that because of the fact that we have our people out there that are uncertain. And I don't know, you know, maybe the congressman's recommendation for a remedy, if we continue to believe that that is the application of the program, you know, maybe we have to go down that road because we really, you know, it really is the benefit, the individual receiving the benefit under this program, right? I mean, that needs the clarity, and we need the clarity to who is eligible, because, you know, those are the folks that are trying to survive during this bridge to getting back to work. So I'm just really continuing to be concerned that, you know, our people will continue to be confused as to their eligibility if we can't nail this down. So I really think that, you know, I don't know, Director Del Solo, whether you just look at it right now as, you know, we just agree to disagree, or whether, you know, or whether this, you know, whether you're also looking for a fix, maybe something along the lines of what the congressman discussed, because, you know, our people out there are the ones who are going to end up being confused over this, Madam Chair, and I think that we need more clarity.
Right.
Well,
So
I agree with him on a lot of what he said, and I don't disagree with a lot of what the congressman is saying. We might have different perspectives on what the solution may be, but we're one voice as far as we need this to be fixed, and we need this to fix as immediately as possible. Right. Healthy debates is what we're all about. I'm not expecting anybody to agree with my two solutions, nor would the congressman expect everybody to agree with everybody of his solutions, but we need to have different perspectives. We need to make sure we're looking at all options, and we need to debate them and hope that one of those solutions, whatever it is going to be implemented and saved. But the one thing we are in one voice with the congressman, myself, and the governor is that this needs to be fixed or taken care of. and how everybody does it is, up to them. And, anything I can do to support the congressman and what he can do, whether it's my solution or his, I will do nothing but give him every support that I can to make sure that he champions it. And that's all I care about, champion.
And I agree, David. I mean, I would sign that resolution, today. The thing is that what I wanted to make sure that those that are watching this hearing and those beneficiaries that are considering what they're going to do, they're going to get that notification when they go to the US DOL or the DOL's website saying that, are you eligible? Are you not eligible? If you are currently partially employed, the official position from Department of Labor is you are not eligible for PUA at this point.
And that's on there.
Yes.
Okay. And then that's the clear from the definitive position from USDOL, so that our people are not confused. I continue to be intrigued as to I think the congressman's position is we should still continue to exercise the program and pay it. So I'm going to be on board with a solution, but it's the lines are clear here in my opinion, and I think that the people of Guam need to know that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Yes, and that I think we should wait until some stopgap measure is fully defined. I think it's good to basically what it says in the latest program guidance is that individual who's working reduced hours does not satisfy the requirements for eligibility. So that was pretty clearly written in the latest guidance. So until the Director Dave De La Sola and Congressman have a stopgap measure in place, I would perhaps wait. Otherwise, risk the possibility of having to pay back any money that comes out. So I think that's the safe bet. But again, if you have a unique situation, Department of Labor is having these satellite locations at Dedido, and soon I think Joinia is going to be opening up. So they're willing to work with you, to work with the public. So to make sure that you're filing a claim properly and that you're eligible, that you meet the eligibility requirements. So I hope that makes some sense. Okay, so now I'd like to recognize Senator Telotaitigui. You have the floor if you have any questions.
Sujus Masli, Madam Chair, for the opportunity, and good afternoon, Congressman and Director De La Sola. This is such a surprise having the Congressman up. Thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope to see you on many more Zoom meetings that we're having here moving forward, especially dealing with anything that has to do with the federal government. So I greatly appreciate you being here and providing your insight, especially what was mentioned by my colleague, Senator Duenas. I think we need to get to the bottom of this, and find out exactly and not confuse him. But Congressman, is there any indication from the Biden administration on possibly extending both programs beyond the current termination dates?
That discussion is ongoing, even in the Congress. I know that there's been some news about a new relief package. Those details have not at all been really carved out yet, and there are a lot of differing views in the Congress on how to pursue a phase 3, so to speak. But yes, there is a discussion about something beyond the ending dates that we've originally discussed. I believe that's the 27th of March. So yeah, there is discussions on it. Okay,
thank you so much, Congressman. And I believe I provided, Madam Chair, all my questions to you prior to this public hearing, and I greatly appreciate some of those that were being addressed. Many of them were addressed. However, my concern here, one of them was, of course, what you brought up, Director De La Sola, refusing to work. Is there a number is this provided to all employers, or how is this number or this email being distributed and outreach to all these companies?
I'm sorry, didn't quite catch that full. How's it going out, that information?
Right. How are you getting this?
Yeah. There's
How
an
to
ad.
contact? It's an
There's
ad?
an ad in all the newspaper, and there's also ads in the radio that will be running. And that's what I was
Okay, is
just
there
kind of
any-
showing here. There's a copy
Okay.
of the ad
Okay.
that's going out,
Okay.
and we're
Well,
making audio commercials.
Okay, well, if there's any possibility, I'm sure when you receive these applications, they indicate the place of employment for all these applications coming in. So it might be even more helpful to these employers to know directly and receiving something from the Department of Labor, since you already have the name of the businesses that are there, and I'm pretty sure you have their emails as well. So a lot of times people call my office because they don't know how to get a hold of them. I always take them to your website, but it goes a little bit further, a step further to, inform the public. So as simple as just sending an email to all those businesses. It was mentioned earlier too, with regards to the mistake that was made from Department of Labor, and regardless it was made from other jurisdictions, the mistake was made. I just hope to goodness that these people do not have to pay back any of this insurance funding or this assistance that they've been receiving, from that. And moving forward, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to take a little bit more caution and read the fine line the next time going forward on how to, especially if there is an extension that's planning in the make. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Other than that, I think, Madam Chair, I appreciate you incorporating a lot of my questions onto your provided to the Department of Labor for their instance. And Madam Chair, there was one, I didn't know if it was mentioned, but is it known at this time how many individuals were impacted by the misinterpretation of the policy as of the end of 2020?
I tried to get that information out. They ran a program. I mean, you got to remember, the system doesn't break that out as a separate item. And I did ask that question from our programmers, and they tried to run a quick program that tried to pull who have income in there. But unfortunately, when that number came out, all the fraud that gets thrown into the system is also added to that number and basically made it unusable.
For data purposes, do you plan on just separating those two so that we can get the correct number?
I'd like to. What we're gonna have to do is try to pull the fraud out and get that separated out.
Okay.
This Thursday, I have my meeting with the programmers so that we can discuss, because it's easier to do that when you have like 10 different technical programmers on a call with us, so that we can work through how to best get that information and pull it if it's possible. So we're working on that. Thank you, Senator.
Is there a timeline? Director De La Sola, is there a timeline?
Well, this Thursday, I'm going to talk to them and see, and I'm not a programmer. I have no idea what they'll say to me back. But they did get it to me before last Friday, but that number, like I said, was so skewed with fraud that it made it unusable.
Okay.
And so we need to circle around again and talk to them and see what they have to say and what kind of timeline exactly, because it's going to require programming.
Okay, well, at least we know by Thursday. You could let the oversight chair know on some kind of timeline. We can get that information. So I thank you so much for your time, both of you, and of course, the Congressman for being here again. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Taitakwi. Senator Tony Ada?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Congressman. Good afternoon, Dave. How you doing? Good. So Director De La Sola, I just wanted to know, of all those who have applied and deemed qualified, Has everyone already received their benefits for the past several months that PUA has been in effect?
Well, as I said at the beginning, tomorrow we're going to batch another round of payments, and there is no date on that batch. That means anybody that successfully filed a claim and put in their weeks up to current will be paid. So we're running current on our, as it stands for this week. If we can continue to run that current, a lot of that has to be based on if there are some of our fraud countermeasures are being held in place and they don't get breached.
Okay.
So that's, it's when you get, initially you have 1,000 claims and 900 of them are fraud, you can see the time involved to go through each of those claims and get them DQ'd to get to the 100. But now, it's probably, maybe out of 300, 150 are half are fraud and the other half are clean. So that's how we're able to move so quickly and clean so quickly.
That's good to hear. So that in this next round of payments going out, moving forward, being that you guys have been doing this now for several months, you see claims being paid out faster to the individuals, or do you see still a certain timeline as to when people can expect their payments?
Ever since the middle of November, we've been fast tracking payments. We paid 60 million just in December.
Right.
So we went from being like 2 to 3 months behind in November to being only a week behind in end of December. So we were able, because fraud measures we implemented some really good, strong fraud measures that finally knocked them. And they haven't been able to thwart it yet in enough numbers that, slowed us down. So we're slamming it, we're paying it, and we're up to date. And we've been on an aggressive, path since the middle of November, and to the point where we're caught up.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And I'm glad to hear that. I'm pretty sure that the people out there are appreciative, and, thank you guys for all your hard work and ensuring that these payments go out. I have no further questions, Madam Chairperson. Thank you.
Senator Ada, Senator Joanne Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and certainly to everyone that's participating today, and most especially to Director Della Sola from the Department of Labor. He certainly had a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders since this whole pandemic started, and certainly appreciate Congressman San Nicolas also taking the time from his schedule in Washington to participate. I just wanted to follow up on the question by Senator Duenas, because I think, for everyone out there that is dependent on receiving these type of benefits, I think the two different interpretations kind of leave us all challenged with no timeline or awareness of when we're going to be able to get a single determination on how those that are working part-time, can participate and be compensated. And I just want to know, moving forward, I know that, Director Della Sola, you mentioned for Department of Labor what your positions are and the guidelines and information that you're following. And I certainly appreciate the position provided by our congressman in trying to clarify this issue from his perspective in Congress and what he's seeing happening in other jurisdictions. But, how does that help our average person on the ground that really, through this pandemic is challenged, and, their income to take care of their families and their obligations has been adversely affected? Where does that put them while the powers that be are wrestling to determine which perspective and position is going to be the one moving forward? And will we have any idea of when we can get clarification for them? Because I can imagine those that are afraid if they didn't file properly, if they owe money back, I'm sure that causes a lot of stress and duress. And as you mentioned, there are people at different levels of capability with the technology to file on computer. or dependent upon assistance from your personnel to go over this. And it's just, I'm sure because it's new groundwork for everybody involved to this extent and this massive and this large. There's a lot of apprehension there for people certainly that want to be able to get this funds. But can we get an idea at some point? I know you're looking, Director Della Sola, and trying to get clarification from your end, but why is there such a despairing position with regards to a compensation that can be applied under PUA for part-time employees?
I can't speak to the congressman. All I can tell you is that I went straight to the root of the problem with USDOL. I got the clear understanding and I got clear guidance. I proffered 2 possible solutions. USDOL agreed to those solutions. Now, are there other solutions like what the congressman is saying, which is basically administratively, and that is the same one that I put in the first place, or that is the Secretary of Labor fixing the problem. That certainly is in line with the congressman's solution, going to Biden, writing the letter, and of course, asking him to fix something that wasn't fixed, that wasn't broken. And that can definitely go through the Secretary of Labor avenue, whether it's a KK amendment or whether he straightens the USDOL out and say, yes, the congressman's right, you need to follow his perspective. That was the intent of Congress. Or do you follow the guidelines of the reasons for the eligibility for PUA that was in the original CARES Act? Those are all solutions, and sometimes there's not one solution to a problem, and we have to go at them all as vigorously as we can, because at least we're all in agreement that this is a major problem that needs to be fixed. And I can only tell you, USDOL, who gives me the money, who tells me how to run the program, and gives us the guidelines on how to run it. As you as a former director, I have to follow with the person that gives you the money, the federal agency that gives you the money. And if they say that you have to do this, then I have to do that and to stay in good standing, or I risk losing or paying back the grant. Whether it's you as the legislature or the governor or the Congress or whatever says anything different, I have to follow with who gives me the money and who gives me the guidelines to administer the program. And I think you can understand the position that I'm in, and can know that everything that the congressman says, I have no problems with, and his view of what needs to be fixed, I have no problems with, and I will continue to help him and support him. And our, governor is going with the 2 solutions that I gave her, and she's considering those. And we'll talk. The 3 of us will talk, and whatever they want to move forward with the solution. All I know is that when USDOL tells me that it's allowable, then I can do it. If they say it's not allowable, and if I don't do it, then I run the risk for the whole program. And I ran this all the way up to DC. This is not just region. I had UI administrators and experts on the line, and they agree with us about how devastating and how much of an effect it has on us. But they, by their attorneys, are told this is what needs to be done. This is what needs to be followed. And they can't go against their attorneys, and they're just implementing it to me. So, I'm still just trying to get this fixed in there. And remember, there's a transition going on. You got a whole new administration coming in, and then you got a new program started. So getting quick fixes is a little difficult when there's a whole changeover going on. And if there was the original administration and the original things, maybe wouldn't be, maybe we could do it quicker, but there's a total change out. So I think you can appreciate somebody experiences yourself that getting quick things done real quickly for our small island when there's a whole change of an administration and things, you sometimes have to wait for that dust to settle. I know that was a long answer.
I just want to do a follow-up. So as far as you know, U.S. Department of Labor is implementing the same standard throughout all jurisdictions, including the U.S. It's not just Guam, because I'm sure you have circumstances of other part-time workers in other jurisdictions. So as far as you're aware, that's the standard nationwide that's being implemented at this point?
As I said earlier, yes. For the PUA, you have to remember, the states have UI, which is unemployment insurance or compensation.
Okay.
All those employees are in the UI. They qualify for reduced hours. That whole program is designed for unemployment. The PUA was really designed for the self-employed, the gig workers, and those exceptional few that don't fit in UI. So we're trying to fit a reduced hour UI in a program that wasn't designed for it. And you can, from that perspective, you can understand where I'm coming from. The states have a whole pie. We only have a slice, and we have to still do what we need to do. And again, I'm following what US DOL told me, and here on moving forward. And I hope that the congressman can champion his perspective. I agree with it. If the Biden administration is all for it, and you know, he supports it, they can certainly implement it fairly quickly. And he's in a position to do that, and support of our governor, because she's also in support of that, and also not putting the eggs all in one basket. So we will continue to do the best we can to fight this and get the solution. And I will support the congressman in everything that he's trying to do.
Thank you very much, Director Della Sola. I appreciate your explanation. I understand where you're coming from. I just hope that at some point soon, at least collectively among the Guam leadership, to include our congressman, that you know, we get some sense of direction, because I'm sure those that are most impacted by it are the ones most worried. But thank you for all your efforts. I mean, I know you've probably, out of all department and agencies, have taken on one of the largest responsibilities in being able to address, you know, assisting our community and getting these payouts to the people that need it the most. So thank you very much. I appreciate you responding to my question. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Brown. And I think that's, okay, Senator Taichikwi, you have a one.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I have to ask the congressman, because he was shaking his head, and I definitely want to hear what he has to say. And if you can, because after Director Della Sola was talking, there was something he said that you didn't agree with, and I really like to hear what you have to say on that.
Thank you, Senator. And Madam Chair, I hope also after this I'd be able to close, because I do have some additional detail that I'd like to provide to the committee. But with respect to what I was disagreeing with, unemployment insurance in the States and PUA are two entirely separate programs. And PUA was not intended in any way to be impacted in any fashion by unemployment insurance anywhere. And the reason that's important to clarify is because UI programs throughout the 50 states are different. But one thing that is pretty similar in most of their programs is that they have a seasoning requirement. In other words, you need to be working for like 6 months in order to qualify for unemployment insurance. And so if PUA was subject to UI and UI was the dominating factor and PUA eligibility was secondary to that, then every employee across the country who did not season into UI would have zero support. They wouldn't be receiving any PUA, but they are receiving PUA, even if they do have existing unemployment insurance programs. And it's important to not over define how PUA was intending to support the pandemic, because its entire purpose was to support any unemployment circumstances, regardless of what the UI specificities were. And other examples of how UI and PUA are supposed to work together and not actually work against each other is for a business that, for example, had closed because of the pandemic and laid off all of its employees due to that closure, and then ended up reopening a month later because they got a PPP loan and they were able to rehire their employees back. That rehiring process, or even the hiring of new employees to replace those that they've lost during the closure because they might have moved, they might have gone back home to live with parents or what have you, those new hires by the PPP loan would have not seasoned into the existing unemployment insurance programs. And so those new hires would also be depending on PUA to subsidize them. So we really should not be reinforcing those kind of interpretations, because those are the very same misinterpretations by US DOL that are causing us to have these hardships in having PUA apply across the board locally. The US DOL may be taking a perspective that it wasn't intended to entirely supplant the existence of a UI, but the reason why we wrote the law so broadly was because that wasn't supposed to be a prerequisite to begin with. UI and PUA are entirely separate programs, and the eligibility for one or the presence of one should not discount the other.
Thank you, Congressman, for that. I greatly appreciate you explaining it. It does make sense. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Congressman. So yeah, we have to close shortly. I believe the director has to go fairly soon. But yeah, just to be clear, Director Dave De La Sola, can you please let the public know, what should they expect when they're filing a claim, considering that reduced hour workers are not eligible under this latest program guidance?
I'm sorry, what was the question about reduced hours? What did people expect? Can expect?
What recommendations can you give the public? Being that the latest guidance that was given basically clearly states that reduced hour workers are not eligible.
Unfortunately, hold off filing, because if they file and apply with the reduced hours and it comes back that reaffirmed that it's not eligible, then they would be subject to overpayment. If they hold off and it is corrected or fixed or whatever you want to say, whatever perspective it is, it would be going back to the beginning of the December 27th. And then they could just file for all those weeks moving forward, and they would get their payments, regardless of the time period. So whatever champion or whatever it is, I just wanted to make sure that I don't want to debate the congressman, but you cannot get UI and PUA at the same time. It was designed to be there for those who do not qualify for UI, those self-employed, those gig workers, those Uber drivers. All those people do not qualify for UI. They designed the PUA program to go in and work together with it. A lot of the requirements as far as identification, Social Security, all those criteria, they meshed into the UI so that you have those verifications already built in. The SAVE program, which is a alien allowed to work and would qualify, is already built in. A lot of those stuff work together with UI. And that's why they designed the PUA, is because there was a segment of the working population that did not qualify for UI and have no assistance. So they put together the PUA program. Right. And I just wanted to make sure that that is clear.
Yeah, I think, you both are almost saying the same thing. I feel that, Guam doesn't have a UI program and PUA was its substitute. But that needs to be made clear to the policymakers. So just to clarify for the public, so maybe holding off for now because reduced hour workers are not eligible until we can get these stopgap measures, until we get further guidance from U.S. Department of Labor, because they can always backdate their claim. and they can backdate their claim as far as December 1st, 2020 for this new extension of the PUA. So that is the recommendation. Is that correct, Director?
That is correct. And make sure that you put in all your identification, your employee separation letters, and any other supporting documents, whether it's check stubs, depending on your situation. Maybe please upload it. It is required, and we will process you and pay you very quickly.
Okay, and as far as employers, so in addition to the notification that you just mentioned about returning to work, what other recommendations can you provide employers regarding this new round of PUA?
Well, stay tuned for announcements. We will be letting as we learn it. But the best thing I can say for employers is please give those supporting documents to the employees. That sometimes that is the only thing that's holding them up. I need to see that they're tied to an employer, and sometimes they're having a hard time getting a letter. And those are the kind of things that, you know, when these people are hurting and they can't get the employer to give them a letter. So I'm calling out to them. You need to give these people a letter. You need to make sure that they're taken care of so that they can apply for the program. And other than that, you know, I keep you guys notified practically as it happens, and stay tuned to the media, and I will continue to put out all the announcements and notifications as needed.
All right, so thank you so much, Director. Congressman, I know you requested some last final comment. So
Thank you, Madam Chair. I took the liberty over the course of the call to do a quick draft of an executive order. I do have a meeting with the governor tomorrow. I'll share this language with her, and I wanted to just read it into the record for the hearing and for the senators to also be aware and for the committee to be aware. Please just bear with me. We kind of have a little crazy, write up here, but I'll go for it point by point. One, and this will be an option that we can possibly do as on an executive order level to just completely get around all of this. If we really are going to be running into too many roadblocks, and then the time just begins to take longer than our people are able to handle. Point one, effective December 27th, all businesses on Guam are considered technically closed during such time that a pandemic emergency is declared for the purposes of complying with pandemic unemployment assistance. Point two, all employees of closed businesses pursuant to this executive order are considered unemployed from said businesses for the purposes of complying with pandemic unemployment assistance eligibility. Point three, all businesses closed pursuant to this executive order are duly licensed to do business as a new pandemic business and continue operations if all local regulatory approvals in place prior to December 27th. Point four, all employees working for a closed business after December 27th shall be considered hired under a new pandemic business with all benefits intact if such closed business continues operating as a new pandemic business pursuant to this executive order. Point five, upon conclusion of a pandemic emergency declaration, all businesses shall be considered reopened under their prior licensure in force before December 27th, and any such business that operated as a pandemic business pursuant to this executive order shall have their business operations considered as operations of their original licensure prior to December 27th. Point six, for the purposes of employment continuity consideration, any employees of any businesses closed pursuant to this executive order and considered hired under a new pandemic business pursuant to this executive order shall be considered as continually employed. This language will basically say that the business was closed, they're not working anymore, they're working under a new business license, and everything will just fluidly carry over. And by executive order, it's all in force on paper. Those employees at that point can just go back in and reapply to Department of Labor, having been considered technically unemployed from a technically closed business with their new hourly wages from the new pandemic business being factored mathematically the way it would be factored as if they were a reduced hours employee, as opposed to, as a reduced hours employee that would have originally qualified prior to any of these holdups. This is something that we can do locally if we really aren't going to move forward with just receiving the applications now. And I would advise Department of Labor to run this by US DOL and say, hey, if we did this, would this solve the problem? And then also ask the question, why do we even need to do this to begin with if it's really technically the same thing? You know, because really it's just a completely ridiculous interpretation that's just going to create a new hurdle that we can work around if we have to, but we really shouldn't have to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Director David De La Sola. I think it definitely is going to take a collective effort and multi-pronged approach to get this through, and I have a lot of faith in all of you to try to come to the solution and you know, create this close this stopgap. So I want to thank all my colleagues that have joined me here today, and thank you so much for your hard work. To everybody at the Department of Labor for taking the time to carry out this program so efficiently and effectively for our people. You know, $500 million. That's a large task, and you know, to continue to commit yourself to carrying out this for the betterment of our people. So Zuzmasi to all of those at Department of Labor. And so this concludes our public hearing, our informational hearing. The time now is 3:13 p.m. Zuzmasi.